Hey all, welcome to Brick Colony. Back in 2020, LEGO released the UCS Mos Eisley Cantina. Beyond the fact that this was and is a wonderful set, today I'm more interested in looking at the promotional set released alongside it. Yoda's lightsaber was, unknown to us at the time, the first in what would become a series of promotional lightsaber hilts, continuing sporadically up until this day with the very recent release of the Darksaber set earlier this year. These lightsaber hilts have become highly sought after in the LEGO Star Wars community as a result of their rarity and inherent cool factor. Now frankly, I'm not surprised that LEGO began their lightsaber hilts at the time they did. See, in May 2019, just over a year prior to Yoda's lightsaber being released in November 2020, Disney opened their fully immersive Star Wars park Galaxy's Edge. This was a massive deal at the time, and the park was extremely popular with guests. One of the most sought after experiences within the park was Savi's workshop, where guests could build their own lightsaber. Since demand for the workshop highly exceeded capacity, equally popular were the legacy hilts available for purchase in the Dok-Ondar's Den of Antiquities. These are high quality replicas of the movie props costing well over $100 each. Regardless of price, these things sold extremely well. When I was lucky enough to first visit Galaxy's Edge in early 2020, I saw this firsthand, and yes, I did buy one for myself. It was Anakin's lightsaber, thanks for asking. Anyways, given how long it takes LEGO to produce a new set, the timing seems to line up that they were influenced by the popularity of these props when the parks opened, and a few months later began developing this first product. But it wasn't the first time LEGO designers had approached this topic, and today I want to go back even further to the first year of LEGO Star Wars in 1999 and tell you about the first 3 lightsaber hilts LEGO ever built. The 3 hilts we're looking at today were never released as official sets in the normal sense, however, instead were alternate builds made from 3 of the 1999 sets. They are Luke's Return of the Jedi lightsaber, built from the TIE Fighter and Y-Wing set, Darth Maul's lightsaber, fittingly built from his Sith Infiltrator, and an unknown lightsaber included with the X-Wing Starfighter, a set which we've looked at previously on this channel. This hilt was tricky to find a match for, especially given that there weren't that many to choose from in 1999. Remember that these first original trilogy sets released that year were released ahead of the Phantom Menace, so for simplicity's sake I'm going to identify it as the Jedi lightsaber. If you have another idea, please let me know in the comments down below. Diving into the hilts, I want to start with the Jedi hilt. Given that it's an alternate build, you'll notice many of the parts from the X-Wing being prominently reused here. The main body is built from the 4 engine pieces designed for this set. They're held together with bricks inside and plates and tiles on top. Towards the bottom, some small details are added and a hose element is used to add flavour to the top. The large block of bricks at the end is what was most challenging for me when finding a match for the hilt. I like the look of the build, and the consistent colour scheme is appealing, if not the most accurate. Size-wise, it's very narrow in diameter, but would be a good prop for smaller hands. All things considered, it works as a successful alternate build at inspiring creativity within the builder. It reminds us that alternate builds can be anything and don't have to be scaled to minifigures just because minifigs are included in the set. Next up is the lightsaber of Darth Maul. The hilt is easily recognizable with the matching ends representing the dual blades of this weapon. I think the use of this large slope element, commonly seen on TIE Fighters, does a fair job representing the vents along the emitter. The rest of the hilt is very blocky and colourful. If the red works in this model, the blue definitely does not, but when building alternate models, you have to work with what you've got. This is a hilt I would love to see LEGO revisit with their new subline, so I can see it being very popular with fans. There are already many great rebrickable models out there if you're interested. Overall, it's definitely undersized, but surprisingly ends up using a fair amount of parts from the set. The 6x6 plate in the middle makes it uncomfortable to hold in one hand, but with 2 it's much better. Despite its blocky construction, I found it's the weakest of the 3, so it's not one I'd recommend swinging around too much. Finally, we get to arguably the best looking lightsaber of the bunch. This is Luke's second lightsaber from Return of the Jedi. Unfortunately, I don't own the TIE Fighter and Y-Wing set that this model is built from, so you'll have to excuse the incorrect parts and colours. I tried to get as close as I could with the parts I have on hand. I like the use of stacked ground bricks to represent the ribbed section on the prop. My favourite details though are the plates pushed into place on the pommel. The added hint of what's supposed to be yellow matches the gold on the prop. The hilt is also very stable thanks to some Technic axles inside. Now, before you all go type in the comments, yes, I could see this as also being Obi-Wan's lightsaber from A New Hope. Perhaps it even makes more sense when you consider the film that the original set is based on. However, The two hilts are practically identical when you're working at this resolution. When I first saw it, my mind immediately jumped to Luke, but if you disagree, I won't argue with you. I feel that what I have to say about the build itself is basically the same regardless of whose lightsaber you see it as. So, going back to our build, if LEGO was actually intent on designing a lightsaber hilt as a standalone product during this time, I could see this being very close to what would make an official set. The size is great, and it scales properly with its modern counterparts. On their own, none of these three builds are that exciting. I've even skipped building these models in the past, and it was my first time building each of these for this video. However, when looking at the three put together, I think they look decent as a small group. I can imagine that as a kid these would have been fun to build and wave around with a friend or sibling. I'm very grateful for the time and resources that went into developing the alternate builds, and I think they're sorely missing from modern sets. But let me know what you think. Which of these three is your favorite, or which lightsabers would you like to see from LEGO in the future? Let me know all of that down below, and don't forget to subscribe to join the colony and follow the adventure.